And we probably know most Americans want to get the coronavirus vaccine. We also know you have a lot of questions. Our panel of experts joining us now to answer many of the questions that we received from viewers in the last few days, and we'll try to get to them, as many of them as possible. The first question is from Lisa C., and it is for Dr. Marvasti. It says, with only a few months of trials, do we know how long the vaccine will provide protection?
The short answer is we don't know completely. From natural immunity from folks who have had the virus, we know that reinfection is rare and that the immunity can last anywhere from 2 to 3 months. There are some studies that are showing that it's longer, up to 9 to 12 months, but we still don't have conclusive data in the real world. So it really remains to be seen as we kind of get it out there. And with respect to that, we know that the impact for the Pfizer vaccine in terms of the protection it can have is 12 days after the first dose, you start to see about 52% efficacy. And then about 7 days or more after the second dose, it rises up to that 95%. And again, the data for the Pfizer vaccine is really about efficacy within the study for reducing your risk of getting severely sick from COVID-19. It doesn't reduce the spread. So you can still spread it to others and you can still get infected. That hasn't been completely studied yet, although they are looking at that now.
So the next question from Robert M. kind of follows the efficacy and the length of time you have protection. This is for Will Humble. Will people need to be vaccinated then every year, every 6 months? Will they need some sort of booster? Is this going to be similar to the flu vaccine where we ask people to get it every year?
Well, for these initial vaccines, almost everybody will need a booster. So both the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines will require a booster shot about 3 to 4 weeks after the initial vaccine. So with this initial vaccine campaign, yes, pretty much everybody will need a vaccine. There is one vaccine candidate out there that's coming that's just a single dose. But the answer to the other question is we don't know. Dr. Marvasi said, I mean, we've only had about 8 months of experience with this. We don't have hardly any experience except for during the clinical trials for the vaccines themselves, and time will tell. But there's good scientists and all hands-on-deck effort by all sorts of public health and medical officials to answer these questions when we're able to answer them. It's just not enough time has gone by yet.
Yeah, some of those unanswered questions certainly lead people to talk a lot about side effects as well. And Dr. Akhter, I wanted to ask this question for you. This comes from Greg. And what are the side effects of taking the vaccine? Are they permanent or temporary? And I guess the follow would be, do we know about all of the potential side effects yet?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the side effects that we mainly see are sort of similar to the ones that you see with other vaccines. So myalgias or body aches, sometimes headache, sometimes a little bit of a fever. That's in addition to the localized reaction one can have, for example, skin swelling or irritation. That's generally what we've been seeing with these vaccines in the trials. Now, you may have heard that a couple people had allergic reactions. We don't know whether that was from the vaccine administration or not in the UK. And those people had a history of severe allergies in the past. And so one of the things we're looking into in particular is anaphylaxis, a particular concern. It may have been a coincidence, but that is one of the things we're wondering about. And if you have a history of severe allergies, especially the vaccines, make sure to mention it to your doctor. But even in that case, it could be it's possible that it could be safe because this is a new kind of vaccine. In general, though, for most people, the side effects will probably be, if any, headache, body aches, slight fever. Those are the ones that we've been seeing.
You mentioned allergies, and this question comes from Mary Jane. And Dr. Marvasti, if you could answer this one. If a person, and this is about specific allergies here, peanut, eggs, or sulfa allergies, should they take the vaccine?
Yes, they are safe to take the vaccine. As Dr. Akhter mentioned, the concern is if you have severe allergies. In other words, if you have allergies of any kind to the point where you have life-threatening anaphylaxis, and you know who you are because you usually have to have an EpiPen, epinephrine, carrying around to save you. For folks like that, no matter what they're allergic to, in the UK, they haven't actually allowed those folks to get vaccinated. The CDC in the US has allowed that to happen, again, as Dr. Akhter mentioned, just because we don't know exactly whether or not it was a vaccine that triggered that, but because of how allergic people who get anaphylaxis are, it's important to talk to your doctor, and the CDC also recommends that people who ultimately get it have an EpiPen by their hand and also be observed for about 30 minutes. So if you fall into that category, make sure to talk to your doctor about it. Otherwise, if you just have a mild peanut allergy, mild other kind of allergy, then you're clear to get it.
I can imagine we're going to say talk to your doctor quite a bit tonight, because obviously your doctor knows your medical history better than just about anybody out there, and so definitely want to consult with your doctor before you get this one. Let's have Will Humble handle this next question. This is from Greg. What are the safety and effectiveness standards for emergency approval of this vaccine from the FDA? Talking about obviously the Pfizer vaccine, which has been approved. Are they different, I guess, from the standards that are typically applied?
Yeah, so because we're in a public health emergency, the FDA is able to issue what's called emergency use authorization, which is not approval, but they're authorizing emergency use temporarily while the FDA still looks at that phase 3 clinical data and to make a final decision about approval. There is enhanced monitoring during emergency use authorization, and in particular with all these vaccines that will be deployed in the coming months. The CDC and the FDA have enhanced monitoring so that they can identify anything quickly. The short answer to the question is, when you approve a vaccine, you have to definitively prove that the benefits far exceed the risks of the vaccine. When you're going for emergency use authorization, that standard is a little bit lower, but I got to tell you, the scientists and the team at the FDA are top-notch folks who have no conflicts of interest. I mean, they really dig into that as well. And I trust the process. And I, for one, would trust anybody in my family to get a vaccine that's just under emergency use authorization and not necessarily approvable.
The FDA has been called the gold standard of approval. Is there a better process out there? I mean, we're usually told we're the best in the world.
No, we're not the best in the world in everything, but I think, the best in the world when it comes to vaccine and, well, in drug safety and efficacy, both. I mean, we've got a rigorous process. I trust the process, and it's a good one. It's not perfect. Nothing's perfect, but this is as good as it gets, I think.
Dr. Marvasti, Dr. Akhter, Will Humble from the Arizona Public Health Association will join you in a little bit with even more questions. Thanks so much.
And we'll be hearing more from all of our experts in just a few minutes. Plus, for one Arizona family, the failure of our state's unemployment system could mean no presents under the tree this year. Beyond just questions about the health side of the vaccine, many viewers reaching out wanting to know more about the actual plan to get it out there. And that's what we're going to discuss with Wendy Smith-Reeves. She's an ABC15 analyst and the former director of emergency management. Wendy, here's a question we have heard just a ton of times. Sue wants to know, how will the various groups of people in the various phases be notified?
Perfect. Notification is going to come in many different forms. So the media, ABC15, has been doing a fantastic job with providing that sort of factual information and data in a very, very timely fashion. Also, the Department of Health Services and the county public health departments are going to be pushing out a lot of good information that tells you when and where you can go and get the vaccine. Maricopa County Public Health, as an example, their website is very comprehensive. I was out there looking at that today. Also, a requirement of participation in this vaccine plan in distributing the vaccine. Those that are providing support also have to utilize the state's immunization information system for reporting purposes. So when the vaccine is administered, they report it through that program. That program also affords them the opportunity to go out and remind you of when your second dose is ready to come up, so you can come back in and get that second dose.
Yeah, critically important there. This next question comes from Carla S. How will enough of the Pfizer vaccine specifically be secured for the second dose for Americans in the necessary time frame?
So the manufacturers have said that they are setting aside that second dose for the vaccine that's been disseminated to all states and territories. So while we've received a shipment already, that same amount is sitting waiting to be shipped out again for the second dose in 3 to 4 weeks. That way the state doesn't have to set aside half of what they've received to ensure that everybody gets a second dose. The manufacturer's already doing it for us.
Yeah, hard to imagine a vaccine rollout of this magnitude. Wendy, let's get to our next question. Tom wants to know, has the state ever undertaken a vaccination plan like this? And if so, what can you draw on from that to help this be successful?
Right, so the state has done similar plans before, not to this scale, but lessons learned from the rollout of H1N1 and others like that are very telling and give us a lot of data and information and lessons learned. But again, this is a much larger scale. We need far more providers to administer the vaccine. So this is really bumping it up to a whole different ballgame when it comes to distributing and administering vaccine for all of our population that want a vaccine.
Yeah. Cassandra from Peoria has this next question for us. When looking at Arizona versus the rest of the country, do we do anything differently when it comes to rolling out vaccines?
Everything is pretty similar across the state, across the nation. You know, we had guidance issued from HHS CDC that gave recommendations to states. All states then took those recommendations and brought together their own local subject matter experts to formulate their plan and to prioritize those groups that they consider essential, especially when it comes into that phase 1B for what defines as an essential worker. That might look a little different from state to state, but you're going to see very minor differences. I think you're going to see a lot of similarities across the nation.
Yeah. All right. Wendy, thank you so much for your time this evening. Certainly appreciate your insight as well.